Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a very special episode of the About to Break podcast. I am your host, Eddie Furth, not Taylor Hughes. And it's not like the Tonight Show when Johnny would take a vacation and you'd get somebody like David Letterman or Jay Leno or Gary Shandling or Joan Rivers. Or what other great comedians can I compare myself to now? It's not a situation like that. Taylor's actually sitting right next to me. But it is a very special episode, kind of like what was your Punky Brewster?
Yeah, it's like when on Punky Brewster when Cherry got locked in the freezer.
Yeah.
And they're trying to teach you like a moral lesson.
There's a moral lesson to this episode.
There is a moral. This is an episode about an episode.
Oh my God. This is the most meta episode of About to Break.
Folks, it took 80 episodes, but I broke. Not in the way I would expect or hope.
Now I'm going to jump in with my first question. There's so much I do want to talk to you about. I want to ask if you saw Ant-Man. I definitely want to compare this episode to Jesse Spano getting addicted to caffeine pills.
Right, or when DJ Tanner got she was not eating and like running on the treadmill, and that was a scary episode. Passed out. Yeah, she passed out on the treadmill.
The scariest thing you can imagine in the middle of white San Francisco is passing out on a treadmill. Okay, so I'm gonna hit you. We're not even gonna tell them the story yet.
Okay.
I want to hit you with a very serious question.
Right now, everyone's wondering if it's that I'm addicted to painkillers or if I passed out on a treadmill. But
you're addicted to caffeine pills. That's
I know, right?
You are so excited.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. You're the host.
Do you think you might have manifested this by creating a situation where you have a podcast called About to Break and in some way created a scenario where in your head and heart the concept to you was either it works or I break?
Huh, you mean like manifested it like it was like, oh, this will be really good for my podcast?
You did this for the story. No. I think of it like, look, I'm a very take control of your life. I'm not one of those self-help book kind of gurus. I do believe in the power of positive thinking.
Yeah.
Of manifesting. Like if you have a goal, you're always going to work towards it. And sometimes that can be the slippery slope of, as soon as I heard it, because the irony.
Yeah.
As a comedian, you understand I am happy you're okay. I was worried about you when I heard something was going on.
Yeah.
But as a comedian, I let out a belly laugh. I was like, oh my God, this guy does a show called About to Break and he broke?
Yeah.
In any way, do you feel like maybe you wound up in a situation where inadvertently, subconsciously, you've put this, obviously we're going to talk about some pressures and anxieties.
Yeah.
But your approach, your view of this happens to be that we as performers are on the edge of breaking, either professionally getting the big break or emotionally and mentally kind of shutting down in a moment. And you had an instance where your body kind of broke down on you because of that stress.
Yeah.
And immediately when I heard that was the irony to me was you manifested the break because that's what you have posed it as.
Well, Scott Neary messaged me afterward and was like, dude, no one was going to fire you from your podcast. You didn't have to do this. Like... I don't know if it was, and I see what you're saying. Who knows? I think it was accumulation of things. And I think that one thing I know for sure is that when I started this podcast, I thought I'm going to help other entertainers deal with this. And I foolishly kind of thought I had a grip on it. Like I had a handle on it. I knew, you wouldn't think that somebody who's having conversations constantly about this with other performers would, not take care of themselves to the point where they just shut down, which is what happened to me.
Yes, but I will also say this to you as a friend first. It's not that you weren't taking care of yourself. I understand that is going to be a huge change that you've made and that we're going to talk about, that we're going to get into. But I want to say, like, you are taking care of yourself. And in that same vein, I want to tell you, like, this is also an isolated incident. This is something that is, look, the way we talked about like a crowd and a show being a series of things that line up to become a perfect moment. This was a perfect storm that went the other way, but it's also not, all the changes you're making are great, but it's also not indicative of for lack of a better term, you not doing it right, you not being good about it. You are taking care of yourself. You also just happen to hit the one moment in stride where all of these things coalesced into a momentary lapse in everything working.
Yeah.
So in the same vein, because I've been in some tough spots. I've been in spots that very much in the same vein had an almost anxiety-like breakdown where I went to a hospital, and the rest of my life I've almost spent in a weird fear of getting back to that place.
Oh, totally.
Without the recognition that not only is my awareness of that going to help me avoid it,
right,
but itself was not. It was an anomaly.
Huh. Yeah. And I think what happens, because it's such a, not a rare thing at all, but because it doesn't happen, when it happens, you don't know what's going on.
Uh-huh.
Like, I was shocked and grateful for how many people sent me texts and Facebook messages and private messages saying, I had a very similar experience happen. I ended up in the emergency room. I thought I was dying. I was convinced I was having a heart attack. And as grateful as I am for all of that, I'm shocked that I didn't realize, I didn't know that that's what it felt like. I didn't know when it happened. Do we want to talk about what happened? Like, are we not there yet?
I mean, if you want to get into it, I kind of like this. I like that we're sussing some things out first.
I just, for me, it was like, I had an experience that I had no way of knowing what it would feel like if it happened to me. And I have friends and family, and I mean, Katie, we've talked about it. She's on this show, but she's dealt with anxiety. And so she's a big reason why I finally figured out what was going on when I went to the doctor and everything was checking out. And I was like, this isn't right.
Almost worse when you can't figure it out.
Yeah.
You would have, in a weird way, you would have preferred to hear you had a blockage and you needed a stent,
I was
right?
convinced.
Because it's a much simpler. God, it's so much simpler then. Right? It's so much simpler to be like, I had a blockage.
Because it's not about anything I need to do. It's, that guy with all that expertise, he's going to go in and do the thing. And then I, take
and
some
maybe
time
there are
off.
some dietary changes you make, but at the end of the day, a clogged artery is a clogged artery versus hitting a moment where, sleep, diet, exercise, mindset, all of it just kind of hit you.
Yeah.
It's amazing to me if you think about this, because we talk about the language we use as performers. We're about to break.
Right.
We either killed or bombed on stage, right?
And that happens from night to night or an hour apart at a different venue.
There's a whole show called I'm Dying up here.
Right.
We use this very dramatic hyperbole to describe our lives as a performer.
Right.
And it made me... I thought about this on the way over this morning, because I was kind of like, we're going to sit down, we're going to talk about how you as a person and you as a performer and you as an artist, somebody who expresses themselves in front of people, how does this all then... Not that people who work at the bank don't also have these moments,
right?
But what ends up happening that separates our chosen profession, why is that so much more personal? And because there's a very obvious thing, like there people who work at a bank, far be it for me to cast aspersions, I've never worked at one, are not as emotionally connected to their work as we as performers are to ours, because of how self-expressive it is. You get on stage and you talk about your grandmother.
Yeah.
Right? You include her in a routine. I get up there and I talk about everything under the sun.
Yeah.
My whole bit is talking about me and what I think, what I feel, what goes on in my life. My mom loved me too much. My dad didn't love me enough. And
when the audience doesn't react to that, or reacts in a way that's, less than encouraging, it's weird. It's like, and again, I don't downplay any job. Every job has challenges and every job is valuable. Like if you're, for example, if you're the guy that puts erasers on pencils, like there's a guy, right? There's a company, they have a Christmas party for that. They go like, wow, we did it, guys. We killed it. So many
pencil eraser Christmas party.
We got so many erasers on top of pencils. Like, look at the figures. They've got charts. There's like a cake and it's got like whatever acronym their business uses that makes sense to them and no one else knows. But like that's a job, right? I'm not downplaying the importance of that, but at the end of the day, I don't think anyone is like so passionate about putting erasers on pencils that they're crushed if somebody thinks that their job is lame or that they, the way they did it.
Absolutely.
It's like anything in the arts, if it's good art, it's personal, and it's something that even if it's not revealing about your life, it comes from your life and your experiences. So it's a very weird thing to work on something for months and then put it on stage and somebody else gets to tell you if it's worthy or not.
You struck on, I always say it's one of my stand-up albums is going to be called Funny by Committee.
That's great.
Right? Because that's what it is. I'm funny
right.
if everyone in the room decided I was funny that night. You did mention a word that I think kind of nails it, which is passion.
Yeah.
There are certain people.
Yeah.
There are certain professions. And to be honest, it goes to me, it does go outside of artistry and creativity, expressiveness, because there are people who are very passionate about their work. But I've found recently in my life, I'm having more and more difficulty having regular, everyday, average Joe conversations with people who I find don't have a real passion in life. Yeah. So very simply, if I can't look at somebody and say, what's your dream job? If they don't have an answer, I find that I can't get into a very deep conversation with them because they're not connected, they're not aware, they're not living with that passion which drives you. You and I both know what our passions are. No, we might have a lot. We might express them in many different ways. There are 100 different quote unquote dream jobs we have, but you and I are passionate people.
Yeah.
So we can talk for hours, as we usually do, sometimes recorded, about anything in the world.
Right.
And it's about that passion. But like, I don't mean to make it sound this oversimplistic, but when I get in an Uber and the Uber driver wants to talk to me, there's an almost immediate shutdown for me because I'm like, I just don't feel like you're living the most passionate life you can. 9 times out of 10, it's not somebody who's like full gusto, living every day like it's their last. I need to get this thing done. I need to get this thing off my chest. I need to get this out. I'm focusing all my passion on this thing. And
you know what I do every time I get in an Uber?
What do you do?
This is what I do before they say a word.
What do you do?
I introduce myself, and then I straight up go, what do you do when you're not driving?
That's a good one.
Because I don't want to talk about sports. I don't want to talk about what songs on the radio.
Yeah.
That's just like, why are we doing this? But
oh my God, traffic and weather in an Uber is the worst.
Yeah, but I've been shocked how many people who drive Uber are artists who are like, well, I'm really into this. Or I want to do that. I mean,
as a comedian, absolutely. I know them. And not to say that there aren't passionate Uber, but they're not passionate about Uber.
Right.
And
yes, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
You know what? And I'm using it as a very base example, but it's talking with people who, I went to Connecticut with that bar mitzvah.
Yeah.
Plenty of people not passionate about their job, and I couldn't strike up an alternate conversation with them.
Yeah.
Oh, the funniest, oh my God, I sat down at the table. They had separated at so after the service, they had a little luncheon, and then later was the reception.
Yeah.
Where we would have the party. But at that luncheon, they kind of separated. They did this thing where they shook up the tables. So it wasn't couples at a table with other couples. Like there was a boys' table.
The seating assignment?
I was at all the guys, and then the wives were at the table next to it.
Okay.
And I sat down, and I just had this weird thought. I was just like, this table, there does not feel like there's a lot of testosterone at this table, even though it's full of guys. And so I'm a comedian. I was in the playful mood that day. I was like, guys, there's just not a lot of testosterone at this table. And one of them was a power lifter, personal trainer who I worked with in Connecticut when I started out. And they were like, well, John will make up for the testosterone. I was like, I don't know. And so the conversation goes, and we're trying to find something. And I expressed that one of my kind of 5-year goals is to learn how to bow hunt. And I want to go bow hunting for wild game. If I'm going to eat meat,
right,
I want to be as closely associated to the process so I can understand and appreciate,
right,
and do what I find is the most responsible, proper thing. Like, if I'm going to eat a wild game, which is the best you can, whether it's a wild turkey or an elk, or
right,
I want to hunt it. I want to understand and experience and feel the connection to understanding the sacrifice of that life.
Yeah.
And I brought this up and I talked about it. And all but one person at the table was so confused and against the idea of hunting to the point where I had this perfect callback punchline where I was like, guys, I'm the comedian and I'm the only one who's eschewing the value of hunting. I told you there wasn't enough testosterone at this table.
And then they all ate like a steak.
And they were all, that's what it was, because the personal trainer was talking about this experiment with this guy who was like, I'm going to make my own cheeseburger. So he grew and ground the wheat. He got a cow and milked the cow that he turned it into cheese. And he then slaughtered the cow and made the beef. And it cost him like $5,000 in 9 months to make the one cheeseburger. Now, obviously, he had a lot of other products from it.
Yeah, he had a lot of cheeseburgers.
He had a lot of cheeseburgers, but it took him $5,000 in 9 months to do. And that's how it started. And I was like, I wanted to be connected. And the other guys were like, they were fine eating factory farmed meat. But I was like, you don't want to have... So it's that lack of passion that I find that then bleeds into that, where it was like, you don't even as a human being understand the idea of the connection to the circle of life.
Yeah.
And the expressiveness and that part being so important.
Yeah. I think that I think sometimes people burn out because they lose the passion. And then I think
burn out of what? Of other things? Because this all to me ties into the idea of what we do requires passion. Right. Kevin Smith talks about, he says, you got to be in love with your art. Right. You got to be in love with your art, like the way of like, let me take you into the bathroom and steal a kiss before the thing. Right. I can't keep my hands off you. I think about you. I need to text you when you're away. I miss you. Like, you have to be in love with your art. Yeah. Right. Like a teenager. Yeah. That passion. And I do believe it translates to other things. I'm not naive enough to think that, well, you got to be a performer or in the arts to have passion. No, like there's teachers who are very passionate teachers. There's, I've had basketball coaches in high school who were so passionate about coaching that changed our lives. Right. Right. So
well, you can tell when someone cares. There's a distinct difference when somebody's doing something because of a paycheck or because they have to, or if they genuinely are passionate about it. I think when you talk about stress and anxiety and like the panic that we can feel as artists, I think sometimes people lose the passion and then that leads to panic. But I think sometimes the more intense your passion for your art gets, if you're not careful, you can apply the same amount of pressure that you do passion and feel this obligation that if I don't make something happen, no one else will. And I think that's part of where I found myself was like,
do you ever lose your passion? Is that what
No, not a loss of passion. I mean, there's nothing I would rather do with my life. Yeah. I am so grateful that I get to do this every day. And yet the pressure of nobody else, like if you work for a company, everybody's waking up trying to make that company money. Even the CEO is like, hey, we got to make some money for this company because we got people to pay.
There's a manager standing there going like, guys, we got to increase the number of erasers we put on the top of pencils. We need more.
Yeah. Someone's like, what about mechanical erasers? They're like, that's not our business. Stay out of it. But for me, it's like, I think just the weight of nobody is waking up tomorrow thinking, how can I make money for Taylor and his family? Yeah. How can I pay the mortgage and $1,200 a month for health insurance?
You're a corporation of one.
Right. And it's also a weird situation when you're the product of the corporation. So not only are you the manager and the CEO and the finance guy and the marketer, but you're the product. Like, we're in a business where I don't get paid unless I leave my house, go somewhere else and perform.
And sell you. You are the...
Right. Which a lot of people will see how much you're traveling or the work that you're doing and go, man, you're killing it and that's great. But what they don't see is that when you're at home, you realize... I love being home. If I could make money and just stay home all day, I would do it in a heartbeat. But
wait, you mean a podcast?
I said make money, Eddie. Check us out on Patreon. Anyway,
you too can be a producer.
But I think that people will see like, oh, performers are doing this and that and all that. But what they don't see is you saw 1 hour on a Thursday night, and you didn't see the rest of the week that we're just hustling for the privilege to spend that 1 hour in front of people and get paid for it.
In wrestling, they say that the time in the ring is not what you get paid for. You get paid for showing up to getting to the building, travel, keeping your body, everything else. The 30 minutes you have the match for. Yeah, that's the joy. That's the fun. That's the break. Right. You're getting paid for all the other stuff.
Yeah, in the times that it doesn't happen, and you know, I it's not funny. Like, I know that everybody, when you're at an airport, everybody's tense, and no one goes to the airport unless they have to be somewhere. Like, and it might be a family birthday party, whatever it is. It might be a work trip. But I always laugh when, like, a businessman who's getting paid a salary is losing his mind that a flight got canceled. And I'm sitting halfway to a gig across the country and going, well, I just lost $2,000. Yeah. Like, you're still getting paid, and I'm not getting...
That was a quarter of my month.
Yeah, I'm not getting anything. And I've got to buy a hotel to stay the night here and then pay the charge to get my flight fixed and get back home. And I did all of that time away, and I'm coming home with nothing.
How many times have you missed a gig?
Luckily, it hasn't been that often. I've had probably 3 times in the past 2 years that I missed a gig because of, like, a flight cancellation.
How does that feel like? Because I've never had to miss something like that.
It's horrible, man. I mean, here's the deal. It's like, sometimes we do shows, and we talk about this a lot. Sometimes we do shows that's like, I don't care if I'm getting paid. I'm so excited to do this. It's the venue, or it's the performers you get to work with, or it's just the
crowd that night is just
but then there's those other shows where you get on a plane and you fly to another state that you don't really care to go to because you're going to pick up a check when you get there. Yeah. It's the only reason. I would not leave my wife and kids to go to another state just to have a fun show. Like, I'm going to get money. And so the feeling of going through all the hassle and the travel, and then, you know, you get home and you don't have a check, like, and now not only are you wiped out and exhausted, but I got to go hit the computer and hit the phones and figure out where's the money coming from, because that's like, I still have to pay my mortgage in a week.
That's the large scale version of showing up to an open mic and your name not getting pulled, and you're like, I was here for 2 hours, just listening to other people said great.
Yeah, I had someone message me. I probably shouldn't say this. I'll say it anyway. We're doing a show. We're doing a show on Tuesday. Yes, and one of the fun things is we booked a couple acts, and then we said, hey, wouldn't it be fun? We'll just make it like, come out, have fun, see the show, and put your name in a hat, and we're going to draw names and fill up the rest of the show with performers we draw names from the audience, which is like such a fun thing. Yeah. It happens all the time in comedy. It happens in improv and storytelling shows. And I thought, well, what if we gave magicians and variety artists the opportunity to do that? Nice. And then I got a message and someone, a nice guy, but he's like, so I got to bring my stuff and just hope to get my name drawn. And in my head, I'm like, yeah, I only if you want to do it. Like,
no one's forcing you to, or just stay home. Right. That is also 100% to make sure we still include the concept. Yeah, that is what ends up making what we do also a little bit more, again, non-comparatively, but difficult. Yeah. Because there is no guarantee. Yeah. As a comedian, there's no guarantee when and where I'll get spots. Right. There's no guarantee how I'll do it. The process to get there is infuriating. I always say that if I wanted to be a teacher or a lawyer, right, the path is very simple and set out. You take these classes for these numbers of years, and then you intern or, student teach or a legal assistant. You know what I mean? There's a... Yeah. With performance...
You have to make up your own opportunities. You have to create shows. You've got to come out. You've got to figure it out.
You have to show up at places and put your name in a bucket and wait and hope you get pulled. And if it doesn't, you go on to the next one. Yeah. Yeah. It can certainly. So what then causes you the anxiety, the stress? What makes you feel the pressure?
Yeah. So
what is it that brings that on for you?
For me, and again, it's tough. I know it's a privileged conversation to some extent. I feel like I have to say that so that I can speak freely.
I appreciate that.
I mean,
moratorium, because we get it. Like, we understand. We are fortunate to be in the places we are. Yeah. We've worked incredibly hard to get to the places we are. And while not life and death, this is our life.
Yeah. And I don't. Yeah.
And we make a lot of sacrifices, as you said, that people are not aware of.
Right.
To get to these time with your family. I've moved across the country. I don't get to see my mother.
Right.
Sacrifices of so many other little things of security.
Yeah.
Right. You and I don't have a salaried position. We don't have a guarantee of health care and other things, but you gave those things up. And that's what then forces you to work that much harder on the other end. And why, I'm sure you'll cover this idea, why those pressures and stresses can feel that way because of the privilege, yes, but also make no bones about it.
Yeah.
We made choices, we made sacrifices, and then made what we wanted happen.
I'm glad that you brought that up that way, because I don't say this to whine and gripe about the situation. Like, you and I and other performers are well aware when you make a decision to say, this is what I'm going to do, not just as a hobby, but as a career, you sign up for certain things. And the reason... maybe this is the reason why we talk about it on here, is I feel like other performers either have to learn that the hard way or they can learn it from other people's experience. But if you're going to glamorize the world of show business, you need to know what you're signing up for, and you need to be very aware of what your intentions are. Like, if you're doing it just for fame or fortune, it's ridiculous. Like, there's so many better ways to make money quicker. Or
and so many more.
Yeah. And
I always say it, if I wanted to have made money, I would have been a lawyer. It's the same as a comedian, just without punchlines. It just, right?
Yeah. You get to talk all day.
The other thing, I kind of want to expand on this, when you talk about other performers can do it, but I don't think we do it with each other nearly as much as people outside of performance do it to us, which is glamorize what we're doing.
Right.
And they say, it should be great, or you're worrying about this, or first off, it's difficult to understand how much. The thing that I've started to recognize is, if I do this for a living, if I am a comedian every day of my life, then like any other job, there's good days and there's bad days.
Right. You
don't walk into the office every day. When I was just a personal trainer and basketball coach, not every day was a banner day.
Right.
Right. If 5 days a week, maybe 2 of them were great. Maybe there's a month I'm on a roll. Maybe there's even 3 months I'm on a roll. And then maybe there's times where 3-4 days out of the week, I'm just chopping wood.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, we also have to compound that to the idea of you and I aren't performing every single night.
Right.
We're in gaps. We perform twice this week, 3 times the following week. We're off for 2 weeks. Then we have 5 gigs and then 1 gig. And so then when you have an off night, so last night was one of those nights for me.
It was great.
Last night was when we talked about, I ran the full gamut of emotions because at about 10:20.
In like 30 minutes.
30 minutes.
Yeah.
in the time of a sitcom.
And I watched you do it, and I knew what was going on, and I was like, oh, this is.
Which is funny because at the house, before I left the apartment, I was like, tonight's going to be a good show. I could feel it. I could feel that crowd gathering before it gathered.
Yeah.
I get to the Comedy Store because last night we were at the Comedy Store. We roasted World War II for Historical Roast. We had an incredible panel. Comedians like Matt McCarthy, Jeremiah Watkins, Sarah Benincasa.
Great lineup.
They played Hitler, Stalin, Mussolini, Einstein.
So funny.
Willie Hunter is Joe Louis.
Yeah.
At the Comedy Store, honest to God, one of my favorite places to be in the world.
Yeah.
And about 10:15, 10:20, when the show starts at 10:30, we had conservatively a dozen people in that room, right?
Yeah.
You were up there. You got up there early. So I love the idea of watching it through your eyes because you got up there before the show started.
3 people.
You hung out with Heidi and Marissa, Ryan and my girlfriend, and it's the 3 of you. And 10 minutes to showtime, we're missing one performer. We couldn't find Einstein. And the room has 12 people in it. And I went downstairs with Ryan trying to find Einstein, and I looked at him in this moment of despair and just was like, I can't keep performing this show for only 12 people.
Right.
It's heartbreaking to get all those costumes, get all the people,
like
write all the stuff.
It's like an insane amount of work and research and time and money that goes into
and then to either miss the gig or have a small audience or an unappreciative audience, this feedback that we want that can't be necessary for what we do, but is absolutely funny by committee, is absolutely necessary for it. And this moment of like 12 people, like I felt embarrassed at the Comedy Store. I was like, oh my God, I'm trying to make a good showing at the club so we can get invited back and then get a regular spot and work with all the names who are at the Comedy Store. We want to attract the guys from downstairs to come upstairs and play with us.
Right.
And then within 15 to 20 minutes, it went from 12 people to a legitimately packed house with over 50 people. Like, amazing. And there was, in 30 minutes, I went from, and you know what I did say to him to put that full button on it? I looked at him and when I said, look, I can't keep doing this for 12 people.
Yeah.
Now, I would never not put on the show.
Right.
Because the alternative to that would have been like being, well, what if we just didn't put it on? Then we wouldn't have just a small audience. And again, we didn't even end up with that. But in that moment, I was like, it's not that I wouldn't put on the show. I would always choose to do it. Rather than not do it.
Right.
But God, it sucked when it looked like it was going to be something that it wasn't and something that we didn't want. We want that full energy of the crowd and we want the payoff of putting this thing together and then a bunch of people come and love it, right? That's the whole...
Well, what's crazy too is the same amount of time, it costs you the same amount of time and money and resource and energy if 5 people show up or 500 people show up.
Oh my!
As a producer, as someone putting on a show, it's the same amount of work. So you're always going to want as many people to experience it, and that comes out of the passion. It's like, I believe in this. I love this. I think this is great art. I want everybody to see this. Mm-hmm. So that's when it's disappointing when you have a smaller crowd or things like that. But
Lorne Michaels was talking about this on his episode of Comedians in Cars with Jerry Seinfeld. Yeah. Because they were talking about Jimmy Fallon, who in the past I have not been as much of a fan of.
So you saw him on Comedians in Cars? No?
It helped. Yeah, but the moment that really pushed it for me was actually this moment on Lorne Michaels' episode.
Okay.
Because Lorne said it takes just as much effort to make a bad show as it does to make a good show. And what he was complimenting Jimmy Fallon on was no matter how good or bad the movie is, no matter how good or bad the show is, Jimmy Fallon will treat you with utter respect and elevate it because he think about, you make a bad movie, everyone was still on set every day working as hard as they could. They were doing their job. And that's it, that you work really hard to put the show together. It works. It takes just as much effort to put together a show where things don't go right, where things don't add up, and the audience doesn't show up as it does when everything goes right and they do show up. It's the same amount of effort.
Right.
And that's why it feels to me so crushing when nobody shows up or a comedian doesn't come prepared and it kind of the flow doesn't work or there's a beat that misses because you're like, it took the same amount of effort as when it crushes, but here we were crushed versus crushing it. Again, using the hyperbolized vocabulary.
Yeah.
So what happened?
Oh man.
Give me the nuts and bolts. Walk me, because we actually haven't, I have not heard the full story of what happened. I've only heard bits and pieces. So tell me what happened that night.
So I'll start with what happened that night and then could talk about some things that led up to it. Possibly.
However you want to approach it, but yeah.
So this was like we're almost 3 weeks ago is all. Mm-hmm. I was getting ready. I had started on a Thursday night a run at the Castle on a show that I was so excited about with my buddy Jimmy H. And it was a killer show, man. We'll have to do it again sometime. We asked 100 people, what would you do if you could do real magic? And you know what none of them said?
What?
Link 2 rings together. Find a lost card.
I love this idea because if you could do real magic, you wouldn't spend it on any of the things that magicians spend it on.
So that was the whole premise. It's like, hey, magicians, if we're gonna do these impossible things, why aren't we doing things people care about? So we took the top 5 things people said they wish they could do. I want to be rich. I want to make someone fall in love with me. Going blank now, but the whole show was here's the 5 things people said.
Yeah.
And in the next 40 minutes, we're going to try to do those things. And it was a great show. So we did. The
premise alone is beautiful.
Oh, it's so fun, man. So Thursday night, we did the show and it was great. I mean, opening night, it was probably one of the best shows I've ever done at the Castle. Like it was just, it was fantastic. It was a killer show. And that whole week I had been feeling kind of funky, just physically.
What did you notice it running in, or is this retrospective? You noticed?
No, I noticed it during the week. Like I went to the chiropractor because I thought, oh, maybe I need an adjustment. Like near my rib was hurting, and like I just felt kind of funky. I thought maybe I had like a mild bug or something. And Katie was out of town during this time. She was with the kids up at her parents' house.
She was out of town when this happened?
Yeah. So, no, I'm sorry. Early in the week.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
so they were around when you were at the test.
Yeah, they were around. They came home the Thursday they came home from their trip.
Did Katie make it to the Thursday night performance?
She didn't make it to the Thursday night because they were driving home. Okay. And then Friday is when this happened. So Friday night...
she's at the show Friday?
She wasn't there at the show Friday. We had gotten... I stayed up all night one day getting tickets for the kids to go see Fuller House be taped because they...
Did they go see it?
They were the last people in line before the line got cut off. Oh. But it worked out because if they had gotten in, they would have been in the taping while this happened. So
things line up sometimes.
It's crazy, man. It just so happened that I'm at the castle and they're 20 minutes away at the studio, and their thing gets canceled. It's in Burbank at
Warner's,
yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yep. And so their thing gets canceled, and I text Katie and was like, I'm going to the hospital. So basically what happened is
it's Friday
I wasn't feeling great, and I told Jimmy a couple times, I'm like, man, I'm just feeling off today. But again, I didn't know what I was feeling. Like it was I just felt kind of icky, like I was getting sick or something.
What time did you show up to the castle on Friday?
I got there early. I got there like...
I want like the true crime version, like 3 o'clock I arrived.
It was a steamy night in Los Angeles. I got there, I think probably like 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
I got to the castle, and I saw Joel Ward, and Jimmy and I grabbed a bite to eat and just hung out, and then we went and set up for the show. And I was really looking forward to the show. Like I was excited, even though I wasn't feeling great. I was I was stoked to be. I mean, it's my favorite place to perform.
There's an old adage in basketball that the ball is the best medicine.
Yeah.
On defense, your ankle's killing you. But if you have the ball in your hands and you're going to try to shoot, your ankle feels great. I can run as fast as I need. Like getting on that stage will cure almost all ills based on the adrenaline rush, the passion, the energy, all the fact that you're taking your mind off of it and focusing the energy. But of course, no matter how you're feeling, the minute you're like, well, if there's a stage and I have this show that I love and I can get up there with it.
Yeah. It is the best, and that was part of too what shocked me that this situation happened at the castle, is because there's no better place to perform for a magician. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't even stressed. I had zero anxiety about the show. I felt good about it. You know what I mean? And we had just done it the night before, and it killed. So
killed. I'm dying up here.
I'm dying. So
Crusher be crushed.
So like we set up for the show. It's gonna be a packed show. They got a whole line of people ready to come in.
What room are you in?
We're in the Peller downstairs. So it seats like
my favorite.
50. It's
my
killer
favorite
room.
That kind of black box intimacy.
Oh, it's great.
I find can never be duplicated.
And the whole premise with that room is we take two performers who don't work together, and they create a show. Mm-hmm. So it's also got a little bit of that, like your roast do, where it's like, hey, we're putting this thing together, and this might be the only time we ever do it.
One time only, keeps you on your toes.
Yeah, it's got a little improv to it, and so I was stoked, man. And then I just wasn't feeling great, but I was still excited about the show. And 20 minutes before the show, we were about 10 minutes away from opening doors, and all of a sudden, I get like cold sweats like I've never had.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that's weird. And it like felt like at first, like when you get a flu and you're like, oh, I probably have a fever. Like I got, cold sweats. Yeah. So Jimmy feels my head. My head is burning up. My whole body is clammy. My hands and feet go cold. Like touches my hand. And it's like an ice cube. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And then the only way I can describe it is like a roller coaster. You know, when you're at the top of a roller coaster and then you drop, and your stomach goes up into your chest. It felt like that, but sustained. And I was like, I think I'm having a heart attack. I told Jimmy, I'm like, Jimmy, I don't think I'm okay. He got the stage manager and Katie, who was running the sound for the show, she came in and they were just talking to me, and I was like, guys, I feel crazy. Like, I can't believe this is happening now. I would never do this at the castle. But if I wasn't here, I would be rushing to the hospital. I think I'm having a heart attack. And in the next...
Genuinely, that's your...
I genuinely, like, beyond a shadow of a doubt in my mind. And I am not a rush to the doctor guy. I'm, like, notorious for just being like, oh, I'll be fine.
Yeah.
I'll be fine. You know, like... And not that that's a good thing, but I'm just saying, like, I've had stress and anxiety attacks, but never where they've physically manifested in a way where, like, so to me, it was like, this is not related to that at all. This is something physical.
What would normally happen when you get stressed? Or
more of a sense of just like being overwhelmed, or being like, I need to be alone right now. I need, I have a very hard time slowing my brain down. So I love that I get in these kind of, I don't know that manic is the right words, but like obsessed with an idea, and I'll work really hard, and I'll crank out a script, or I'll like all this stuff will come, and it's great.
Is that what you do to kind of decompress when you're feeling overwhelmed like that? Like when you feel that other stuff, when that pressure gets you, because like for me, if I get really weird, if I'm outside my head, I suppose, if it's those moments where I'm like, God, the life is just kind of crashing waves against the rocks right now. The first thing I usually do is try to like watch something. Yeah. Get out of my head, like watch a Comedians in Cars, watch some Stephen Colbert or Jimmy Fallon, or, you know, some Tonight Show stuff. You know what I mean? Just go on YouTube and watch something short and simple. Is that your immediate response? What do you do to kind of calm this, like,
I'll watch something on TV, or because like it usually starts as a positive thing, the energy and the almost like self-induced pressure to create. But then the problem is when it's like 2:00 in the morning and I finally go to bed and I can't stop thinking of ideas, or like I can't shut the brain off, which we can talk about it, but I've started implementing some things just in the past couple of weeks that has really helped with that. And I'm hoping it continues to help. But anyway, that night I was 100% convinced I was having a heart attack. And the castle was amazing. They found 2 other performers who had done that room a couple weeks earlier, and they were sitting in line to see the show, and they were like, "Hey, can you guys do a show right now?" And they just were like, "Yeah, let's do it." And
that's beautiful.
It's amazing, man. The way, and this is where,
because you don't want to let the audience down still.
No, and this is where I love. I love the castle so much, man, and I can't say enough great things about the community that's there. I think anytime you have a group of people, you know, that are spending a lot of time together, there's always like the stuff people talk about that they don't like, or this and that. But it's like in a moment like that, I just saw everybody leap into action in a way that was not only on behalf of me, but on behalf of the audience. Like nobody knew there was any problem. The audiences were taken care of. I was taken care of. Basically, Jimmy drove me to Cedar Sinai. I went to the hospital.
No ambulance. So smart.
Well, because
you saved a lot of money.
Yeah. I'm like, if I call in my mind, this is what I'm thinking. If I call an ambulance, I have to wait for an ambulance. And yeah, granted, ambulances can run red lights, so maybe it would have worked out. But like I was so like, I need to be at the hospital. That's all I could think about. So Jimmy drove me and I didn't want to make a bigger scene at the castle. You know, I was already embarrassed a bit that this was going on there.
Now somebody outside of this is going to listen. Yeah. And they're going to call you crazy for still caring about the audience in a moment like this. talk to me about that, because not everyone's not everyone's going to understand that. Here you are, and I'm going to ask you this in a minute, but here you are facing what you believe is a heart attack, an actual moment where your life could be on the line, and there is still a thought of honoring to the audience what they paid for, regardless of the fact that you might be in a life or death situation, actual dying up here situation.
Katie told me, she's like, you should have called an ambulance. I just I don't know, man. I maybe it's not maybe it's part of the artist thing that's unhealthy or broken, but it's like, I didn't want to interrupt. These people paid good money to come out to have a night away from whatever their problems are. I don't need to have them be interrupted with, someone running a gurney through here if I can physically walk to the car. Anyway, I also think too, I mean, we've had some in the magic world as of late. We've had some really dear magicians pass, and so that flashed through my mind briefly, which has probably led to a little bit of the anxiety. I mean, I think whenever anyone passes, you're kind of faced with your mortality, and maybe that added to me thinking this was a heart attack. I don't know. But we went to the ER and they ran every test, dude. I mean, thank God it was Cedars-Sinai, because they don't mess around.
How far was the drive?
It was like 15 minutes it took us or something. It seemed like eternity.
Only because I live in LA would I even bother to ask a question like that, right?
No.
Like my first, that was immediately, I was like,
talk about killer.
Like,
yeah,
I think it's important. I think it's important to note, though, if anyone is going to learn anything, if performers are listening to you, they're going to understand entirely. Hey, he didn't want, not only, I think it's beautiful, you didn't want to worry the audience, but you also had a moment of like, they filled in, they let the show kept going, which to you was good. Outside people, if you're listening to this and you aren't a performer and you're listening to us going, wait, what do you mean? Just cancel that show, let him go to the hospital and call it a night. No, it's not in our DNA.
Yeah.
In our DNA is, there's a show at 7:00. Somebody better be up there.
Yeah.
Singing and dancing for the folks, because that's what's important.
One of the biggest walkaways through all of this too was how everybody helped, and it all worked out. Like personally, financially, things that I had to do that all of a sudden friends would jump in and cover and I didn't have to do that week. And part of my stress and anxiety is this illusion I'm under that I have to do it all myself. I said before, like the idea that nobody else is thinking about us, that I am the only one that can make or break our family's financial, and yet when literally my body just shut down because I didn't listen to it along the way, people stepped in and it all was fine. And seeing that has helped me a lot in the past, 3 weeks to not worry so much, because it's like, oh, I mean, I had a friend, I was talking to my buddy Keith a couple weeks before that. I mean, he knows I've been stressed, and it's just like, and he was stressed too. And like, we always tell each other, when is it not worked out? When have you not, you've always made your mortgage. You've always paid the rent. You've always had food on the table. Like, it's always worked out. It's been tight and it's been crazy at points, but it's always worked out. And, it was very helpful to me to see that even if I can't finagle something to make things work out, it'll work out.
Is there also a part of you that wants to do everything yourself, right? We feel like we have to do everything ourselves. Do you have that thing where, you know, you see the show I run, there's a lot of things that I could ask other people to do,
right?
But there is a certain amount of I want to do it. I want to make sure I have my hand on the thing so that, for lack of a better word, and the therapist will talk months to me about this one, but like, I want to do it myself because I want to know that it was done right and it was done the way I want.
Yeah.
I want to have my hand on the button.
When I worked in an office environment, I was really good at that kind of like delegation, and like I got the importance of all of that, and I would have told you the opposite that I'm telling you right now, but
you would have told me what if you were working in an office?
I would have told you, like, you need to look, if somebody can do something 80% as good as you can do it, let them do it.
Yeah.
Even if it's 20% less in quality, you're going to have more time to focus on other stuff, right?
Yeah, that makes, yeah.
Which I still agree, except for the fact that when you have a project that you are passionate about, and it is birthed out of you,
it is literally a part of you.
There is this weird thing that unless somebody else is going to attach to that idea and say, yeah, am gonna love that idea as much as you are, you can't delegate a task. Do you know what I mean? It's like you can't. When you know what a show,
100%, I understand.
This is why I think so many of us learn how to edit our own videos and, you know, make our own costumes, and it's like, because you know already, you've seen the picture in your head. You
needed to get it that way, and if it's not going to look that way, you have to make it up to yourself. You have to make the deal with yourself of like, okay, this is how I want it.
Right.
If it's not going to be that way, I need to concede.
Yeah.
But to me, when it's the other people, God, a costume, I'll do all of our costumes myself because I know what it has to look like. I don't.
Well, and if you get, you know, God willing, if you get to the point where you have a budget and a staff and a costume department, then you're like, yeah, those guys are professionals at hearing an idea, grabbing onto it, and making it possible. But when you're doing it where it's like, I'm paying for it,
it's all on me, it's my name.
Yeah. Like,
in that great example, you know, where we do delegate entirely is the actual performances of the comedians on the roast. I only give them the basic guidelines of, you know, roast characters, not comedians.
Right.
You know, the guy who played Mussolini last night, Julian McCullough.
Yeah.
He was a replacement Monday.
Yeah.
I talked
for the show Tuesday.
For a show Tuesday. The main comedian, Joe DeRosa, who's supposed to play Mussolini, got the flu.
Yeah.
Had to call out, but came and said, my friend Julian will do it. Julian McCullough will do the show. Great, as long as we have someone in a costume. Right. So I talked to him and I called him and he was like, so like, are these people dead and we know they died? Is it right before they? And I said, look, this is a great question. Right. Do we know if Hitler's dead? Is this after the war? Do we know what's happened since then? And what I told him was, and I think you'll love this idea.
Yeah.
We don't give those kinds of specifics.
Right.
We have never defined whether Hitler was brought back to life for the roast.
Right.
We're not going back. It's however you want to play it, because whatever instinct you have, as long as you're playing within this world, everything will fit. One person might reference. Someone was going to say Hitler was dead that night, but Hitler was standing in front of us, right? So it's a weird universe, and the silliness almost adds to it because it's the irreverence of, we get it. It's a gimmick. It's a joke. We're making fun of these people. We need them present. But we have to be able to reference that Hitler committed suicide because there's a funny joke in there.
Yep.
But you can also reference, well, oh God, Truman did the whole bit where he kept mentioning something that Harry Truman wouldn't be able to know about.
Right.
So he'd be like, and what's that thing? And just little callbacks. So we play with the universe. We delegate to them to write, and we give them as open range as possible, because then you're allowing a creative to imagine, and whatever they can imagine is going to be far better than anything I could help with. I would have never imagined Matt McCarthy's Jews on First routine as Hitler, copying the Abbott and Costello.
Ridiculously funny.
So you get to the hospital, and what happens?
So I get to the hospital, and they immediately do, check your vitals, but they right away.
You're in the ER, right?
I'm in the ER. Within 3 minutes, they've got me hooked up to an EKG and are checking my heart rate or my heart rhythm.
When you went up, you told them, I think I'm having a heart attack?
I said, I think I'm having a heart attack. They said, okay. And it was super cool, very helpful. Took me in. I got an EKG. They did an X-ray. They did, like, within 5 minutes, they had done all these things. And then right away got me into a room in the ER and got me hooked up to monitors, and they're running blood work and doing all this stuff. And we were there for like 3 or 4 hours, and everything came back normal. Like they did an ultrasound, because they wanted to make sure like that my other organs, like even like my gallbladder, like sometimes I guess like some issues with your gallbladder can have some similar effects. And every single test came back totally fine. There was no concern on any of it.
Now, does anyone address you specifically at any point? So I've been to the hospital for a few different things, and one of the things that I've found that was most important was somebody kind of coming over and being like, don't worry, everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Or we're going to figure it out. Like, did somebody come to calm you? What did they say? What was that like?
They had both the ER doctor and the nurse were both amazing. And they said, look, you're in the best place you could possibly be right now. We're going to figure out what's going on. We've taken all of your vitals, and there is nothing right now that scares us. If there was something right now going on that required, immediate attention, you'd already be on an operating table. So you just need to chill and like. Does
that help you in that moment?
It did. It also did concern me too, because that's the moment when Katie was like, she's like, honey, I think you may have had a panic attack. And when she told me that, I was like, no.
When did she show up to the hospital? When did
she got there within like 10 minutes of when I got there.
Because they were over in Burbank.
Yeah.
And Cedars-Sinai's up in Burbank? Where's that?
No, Cedars-Sinai is, what is that, south of the castle. So not Burbank, over in like, I don't even know where that would be.
And again, this might almost sound trivial, but we live in a major city.
Right.
We live in a major city with some spread out stuff. Yeah. And kind of the location and the timing is important to understand, at least for me. Yeah. You're talking Burbank to downtown is about a 30-minute drive in traffic.
Katie was with my sister-in-law and her two kids and our kids.
So Katie came and your
Katie
sister-in-law
came
took the kids?
Yep. My sister-in-law took the kids. It all worked out better than it could have ever worked out. I mean, but even when I left the hospital, I was still having that same like roller coaster sensation.
Really?
And so the ER doctor gave me a referral to a cardiologist, said, I want you to see this cardiologist. He'll get you in right away. And he did, and he was great. I came in the next day to the cardiologist. And I got my buddy Nick Paul filled in for me at the castle with Jimmy. They did the rest of the run together. I got a call from Jack Goldfinger, who's the booking director at the castle, and was the nicest, most amazing call.
What would he say?
He just said, I'm so glad you went to the hospital. He's like, you got to do whatever you got to do. He's like, don't worry about us. We'll be fine. He paid me for the whole run. Like the whole run.
Like that's going to bring a tear to my eye, because that's something that they don't need to do.
They don't have to do that.
He's taking care of you.
I'm creating, this created a challenge for them, and they, brought other people in and had to pay they covered me. They took care of me. And he's like, you got a long time left in this business, and, you'll be back here really soon. And it was stuff I needed to hear, because once I realized that it was a panic attack, it was a major, major panic attack that brought on physical, and it wasn't like psychosomatic where I was thinking of these things. Like these were actually, I had no idea the amount of physical damage stress and anxiety can do to your body. And once I realized I wasn't dying, I was grateful, but I was scared to death, because I thought, I make my living performing. What if I can't do it again? What if I can't, what if I can't control this? And it happens when I'm at some gig that's going to cover us for a month because, the dough is good and just overwhelmed after that by the like flood of texts and emails and private messages of hearing other people go, I know exactly what you went through. I went through the same thing, and giving me personal detail of what they experienced and what it felt like. And knowing that, like, okay, this is not only is this something that a lot of people in our industry deal with, but it's also something you can cope with, and you can learn to manage and learn to look the anxiety in the eye and ride the wave, and so that's the last 3 weeks, man, has just been like exercise every day. I walk 3 to 4 miles every morning.
And that's just to get away from your problems. Hey-o.
I've been meditating twice a day. I've been basically eating, like a modified vegan diet, and just trying to get to a place where I'm not carrying the weight of life.
What kind of, so talk to me a little bit about the physical effects of the stress, because as I understand it, I heard a rudimentary explanation of like an anxiety attack and a panic attack, and how they're slightly different, but they're similar, and that ultimately the idea is that when things go really haywire, your body is releasing the fight or flight amount of, what is it, serotonin, endorphins, and all of a sudden you're in a fight or flight mode over a situation that is not actually fight or flight. And so it causes all of these things. Talk to me about a little bit. Tell me what led up to it.
Yeah.
And then what those physical effects are, and how that felt in terms of the actual feeling of that endorphin rush that is unprecedented.
When so one of the first calls I made, or Katie made for me, God bless my wife, she called my therapist, I haven't seen her in like 2 years. She's been she's kind of easing into retirement years, but she's still amazing, and I can still call her up and go see her when I need to tune things up. But she said, she's like, yes, what you've described is like textbook anxiety panic attack. And she said the same thing you said about fight or flight. And she says, here's what your body will do in order. Generally, you'll feel like you're going to die. And then after that, when you realize you're not dying, you'll feel like you're going crazy. And after that, if you don't get a grip on it, you'll just pass out. Because your body will just say, enough, like stop. Like, you know what I mean? Your body is just on overload because of all of this negative energy you're feeding it. And it was it was weird to me that it happened when I didn't feel stressed. I didn't feel anxious. I wasn't worried about the show. It got a great reception the first night. So it was shocking to me that it wasn't even like something that happened in that moment, but it was a compounding of...
That must have been so confusing.
Confusing.
In that moment, it's not like you were... If I'd had that attack last night when I was anxious that there was 12 people, and we talked about it later, it makes total sense. I was like, oh God, the show's a failure. I'm a failure.
Yeah.
Everything
But if
is
you
ruined.
had it after a show like that, it was a packed crowd and the comedians killed and it was great and everyone loved it. And then out of nowhere, you have these symptoms.
Or the house was full already, and I knew, because you're at the castle, you're going to get a packed house that night, and you're like, and I've got a show that is crushing right now.
Yeah, there was no reason for that moment to instigate anything, and perhaps it was. I mean, it had been several months of stress regarding money, of work. I mean, looking ahead at, and again, It sounds like a privileged conversation, because at the end of the year, when I look at what money came in, I go, wow, we did good. We did okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not, we're not starving, but
you have responsibilities. You have a family. You own a home.
we bought a home within the last year and a half.
You're both working on your own businesses. You and your wife started your own businesses.
We're both doing like an entrepreneurial thing, like, which takes a lot of upfront investment and like trial and error to see how you get the money back. And we've got 2 daughters that have braces. You know, it's like you get a phone call one day and it's like, oh, we got to pay $7,000. Like
fucking orthodonture.
Yeah, like out of nowhere. Or, you know, it's all of those little things that, you know, I'll have some months in this business, and anyone who does this long term gets this. It's like the closest job would probably be like being a realtor. You know, the market ebbs and flows. Sometimes you're going to sell 10 houses in a month. Sometimes you're going to go 5 months without selling a house. And in this business, there will be some months where I go, I've never made this much money in my life. And then there will be 2 months that are just quiet, like a ghost town. And even when it comes to, you know, trying to budget and going, okay, well, we got to save that money for this and that, then those things come up like braces, or, oh, there's a $900 part on the car that just broke. And it's like, well, fix that or buy a new car, you know? So I've been internalizing a lot of that anxiety lately regarding just making sure the calendar's full, you know, and doing that thing of like, I can look 4 months from now and see a lot of work on the calendar, and be grateful for that. And at the same time go, not only do I have to hustle to get something right now to pay the bills, but 8 months from now, I've got a 2-month period that's empty. And what am I doing right now so that doesn't stay empty? It's a wild, and again, I wouldn't want to do anything else. But you've got to keep the passion and not put the pressure on yourself so much.
Now, have you built to that point, or has that pressure been present 3 years ago as well, 2 years ago as well?
When I first went full time, which December will be 5 years. So we're like 4.5 years is all that I've been full time at this. When we first went full time, it was like, my last job just ended. Like I walked out of it because it was unhealthy. Yeah. And in the process, we lost the house and all our money. And so when I first started, yeah, I was stressed, but I literally had nothing. So there was, you know what I mean? It was like
way too well. Do I know what you're meaning?
It was like, in a sense, what do I have to lose? I've already lost it all.
4.5 years ago, I moved to LA. What do I have to lose?
Right.
I literally was living on $50 a week.
Yeah.
I made no money. Also, weirdly, some of the happiest times because there is the lack of the pressure. So I'm like, I'm going to open mics left and right. I'm just doing nothing. I'm hanging out with whoever. And then as time builds and the show changes and this happens, and now you've got a better apartment, right? I got a better apartment, so I got to make sure I hit that number versus when I'm paying $400 to live on a floor. Mo money, mo problems.
Yeah.
It sounds like a ridiculous concept. It's a weird, especially with performance position, but you started, you had almost nothing, so everything was good. Now you've built that equity, you've built the thing, you've changed your circumstances, you've gone out on that limb, you've worked harder to advance even more the podcast, live shows that you produce. You weren't producing those 4 years ago.
And part of it too is looking at, like, you start to build something and you look at the type of work you're doing and you may be busy, but then you go, wait, I don't want to do this. You know what I mean? Like there was a point where I was paying the bills, but the shows I was doing felt like having a desk job again. Because it's so close. It would be like if you want to be an actor, but you're playing,
working at a theme park,
or you're I was gonna say if you're playing Batman at a kid's birthday party, like that's you know what I mean though. Yeah. It's like it sucks. You almost wish I almost wish my job wasn't related to this at all.
Yeah,
because it's so close to the thing that I want to do, but it's not the thing I want to do.
100%.
So that's where I think a lot of the pressure was building.
You have to inject the passion in, but with that, even more is on the line because now you're emotionally connected in a way that you were not. And so when it doesn't go well, or even when it does go well,
right,
that passion, the high emotion, the intensity for which we feel about it, the way you put yourself out, you became a producer in that time. Jokers and Aces, one of the best things I have ever gotten a chance to do. And believe it or it comes with headaches as well. It comes with stresses. It comes with then there is the judgment, right? We put on a show, and when Nerd Melt decided we weren't going to get picked up for a little while,
right?
It feels almost personal, but it's taken away. It's like, but that was us. That's me and you. That's right. That's who we are.
Yeah.
That was a very honest expression. That shows a very honest expression of me and you.
Oh, totally.
You know? Totally. Our sensibility, our style, our approach, our relationship.
Yeah.
And then when it didn't continue briefly and we're still looking for a home and we know we're going to get it back up sometime this year or next year because we're persistent. We don't let it lie. But it's oh my God, it's not there. That is it's almost like we forget the difficulty in recognizing that as adults, we're just as susceptible to learning and growing. And sometimes you go to basketball practice, you get better, you win some games, you lose some games, but ultimately when you're on your way to the championship, you might have a bad season or you might have a bad game. Or in that instance, we still had to learn the growth of what it's like to not have it. Right. And I don't want to use the word failure because it's not a failure.
Right.
But those bumps, the roadblocks, the moments where you hear, in this business, the way they say it, you hear no so that you can say, no, I'm going to make yes happen.
Right. Yeah.
But it still sucks because 12 people at the Comedy Store would have felt like a no. It would have felt like a failure. But that's the thing that ultimately inspires us to say, okay, well, no, that's... Now there's a problem. Now there's a puzzle. How do I solve this puzzle? How do I get around it? What is the thing? The successful people in all of life, but especially here, are the ones who say, "Okay, well, you said no. I'm going to figure out how to get this thing made anyway.
Yeah,
you didn't like it. I'm going to make it happen. The show didn't work here. I'll find out where it does work. Or there was no space on that schedule. Let me find a schedule where it does work. Mm-hmm. Or this bit isn't working. Why am I not getting the laugh? Or where's the turn in the trick? What's the thing that I have to find? It is so important to hit moments of difficulty to find out who we are and how we're going to respond to it. Right. But also force us not just to grow as the human, but solve the problem.
Yeah.
Here's the Rubik's Cube. Here's how it's messed up. Now I gotta turn and twist this thing until it's no longer out of order.
And in the process, maintaining joy.
We're allowed to be joyful?
We need to. I mean, that is that's what happened with me, man. I was so desperate to try to monetize things that I was passionate about that there was no pause. There was no reflection. There was, you do the gig and it's great and it's fun and you don't celebrate it because you're just on to the next one. And that's the challenge I'm giving myself is, and that's why, I'm meditating twice a day and I'm doing these walks and things. It's like, not only do I need to get in better shape because you just feel better when you don't feel gross all the time.
Yeah.
I described how I was feeling like, you know when you eat a big meal, like you just go to town and afterward, like you enjoy it so much. And then afterward you're just like, oh, I'm so gross. I felt that way 3 times a day for like 5 years.
Well, also, welcome to Crohn's disease. Glad to have you on the team, buddy. I'm glad you're a Jew now.
But that's my that's my challenge right now, though, is I need to believe. I need to believe that balance doesn't mean you stop working hard. But it also doesn't mean you kill yourself in the process.
Is there a lot of times I hear the question posed like this, so I'm going to give you the stilted posing of the question, kind of break it down after. What's the number? What's the number, right, that you're comfortable at?
Of money?
Yeah, because that's conceptually, because I that's, so what's the number?
Right.
But in that sense, like, where do you, we all have goals, we all have dream jobs, we all have dream gigs, we all have places that we imagine we're at, whether it's comparing ourselves rightly or unrightly to other performers. But where's that space you get to where you look at yourself and you say, like, I'm here, I made it, I broke, this is the life that I want, this is where I'm comfortable. What is the thing that you're working, because you said, like, you're worried about monetizing things and you're trying to change this. What's the place you get to where you're like, this is where I wanted to be the whole time, I'm happy, comfortable here? Prospectively, we're not, because when we get there, we're going to want more. As I joked last night with Willie Hunter, who was Joe Lewis and Tony Hinchcliffe backstage, how's the crowd? I was like, however big the crowd is, I wanted 10 more people anyway.
Right.
How we did 100 people? Well, what if it was 125? Right. 125, can I get 3? Can I get 5? Can I do 1,000? Can I play at 10,000? Right? Like, up to Kevin Hart doing 55,000 people in a stadium. So what's the thing? What's that moment? Because presumably what we're feeling internally is that sometime in our lives, we're going to get to a place with all of this where we can relax and be comfortable and say the proverbial, I've made it, I've arrived, I'm here, I got my big break. And now, right, is it playing Rio, like Penn and Teller? You have your own show there. Is it a TV thing? What's the thing, or what's the place in your life where you would have given yourself the freedom to say, it's all good, I don't have to worry now?
Yeah.
That's why I say, what's the number? But what's that place? What is it? What's going to make you feel comfortable in that?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I think for me, I think the place and the number are not connected.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why.
That's fair.
I am so enjoying what I am doing right this minute, performing, like producing shows, performing on other people's shows, like what we've done with Jokers and Aces. I love that. Uh-huh. I feel immense satisfaction doing those things. Those, however, are not the things that bring the money right now.
Uh-huh.
So on one hand, it's like, well, from a money standpoint, I don't know. I used to think $100,000 a year was what I needed. I used to think, oh, if I could just get $100,000, and then you get a mortgage in California, and then you have to pay self-employment tax, and then you get two kids. Like we pay $1,200 a month for health insurance, and then still have to pay $50 to $75 for a copay. That's something people don't talk about. Like with all the affordable healthcare and all this stuff, performers get screwed because you're self-employed businesses. Like we don't get breaks other people get as a business, but we also don't have anyone else kicking in dough to pay for stuff. So, I mean, $100,000 goes quick, when it's mortgage and insurance and then you start thinking, well, that's just to survive in Southern California, with school and all this stuff with the kids. And then you go, well, I'm also not getting a retirement. Like nobody's putting money in a 401k for me. I think last time I looked at the numbers with my brother-in-law, I think we figured out probably by the time retirement comes, if we want to live comfortably, we probably need like $2.5 million in the bank and our house paid off. That's an insane amount of money.
That's a lot of extra on top.
That's a lot of dough. So I don't know, man. I hate thinking about the money thing.
I certainly don't mean the question on the money side. Yeah. I also mean so I look at it like this for me. This might help kind of frame it for you. I think to myself, if I could produce the roasts twice a month,
Yep.
I would love to do one historical, one fictional every month.
Yeah.
That were well attended,
Right.
and were at the very least financially self-sustaining. Meaning
Right.
that if whatever I brought in at the door or through merch or something else covered costumes, just general cost of the show. If I could even just break even on the shows to do
Yeah.
that twice a month. If I could perform my ultimate,
Yeah.
right, is to be able to go on the road.
Yeah.
Either open for or play the bigger theaters with other comedians.
Yeah.
The ultimate dream is to be able to be in that position at one point to be able to drop into the Comedy Store whenever I want, or at least be a paid regular where I'm performing there 3 to 5 nights a week.
Right.
If I could, I put it like this: if I could perform stand up every day out of the week, I absolutely would do stand up every single day.
Yeah.
Produce my own shows, appear on television, produce television and movies. Like I have the whole thing.
But do all the things.
I want to do all the things. But if you said to me at the very least, Eddie, you could get on stage every single night.
Yeah.
And you could perform your shows to solid crowds that are self-sustaining.
Yeah.
And you're producing either a television show with it or a movie, or you're doing something in the media in that sense. I would be like, that's where I want to be. And if I can live comfortably off of that.
This is like the what is the ideal?
And what would make you feel less pressure as the performer if you were like, okay, well, the castle is booking me this much and I'm getting out on the road this much on these kinds of gigs, or I have this kind of a show doing that, or I'm able to produce here. And obviously the financially self-sustaining and living comfortably are kind of encompassed within that, because as we've said, if you and I have already proven it, we're willing to spend on a deficit to get to those places. Jokers and Aces.
Yeah, some of the best stuff I've ever done has cost me money. Lots of
Jokers and Aces, historical roast, fictional roast, have only cost me money.
Right.
And I make no qualms about the fact that it has taken a lot, but I would never, ever once go back and undo.
Yeah.
I would pay the exact same. If you told me the price tag, I would be like, yeah, I would pay that for that.
And most people would consider it a failure based on the finances.
A lot of people would look at it. A lot of people would look at it and be like, you're a horrible business person. And I'd be like, fine. But the growth in the other areas, the experiences, never once do I consider the other side.
I think for myself, I used to have those dreams I think we all have of like, I'm going to host the Tonight Show. Like I'm going to do this kind of thing, which those are fun gigs, that's great. But I think for me, I'm realizing there's a very small transition period from being a middle class comedian that most people don't know, but you can make a living being like a middler, or you know what I mean?
Do you have a name that you can be?
Or you're saying that's in this category?
Yeah, somebody
being like a Jimmy Fallon that can't go to the grocery store and doesn't have control over his life anymore.
Who would you put in the middle class? Just as a comparison of like...
Oh, in the middle class?
Yeah, just as like a name where you're like, it's not someone everyone knows, but they're working regular, like a Todd Glass? Is that... Or is Todd Glass even the higher end?
He's probably higher up on it. But I mean, guys that work clubs, but might make $60,000 a year working clubs.
McCarthy might fit into that because McCarthy does Conan regularly.
He's a working actor. He's doing well.
But he also might not be the household name that he could, or let's dare say should be, because of how incredible he is.
And for me, it's not about a fame or notoriety level. It's about there's a certain level you can get where you have an audience that will afford you what.
You literally say it's not about notoriety, but it's about a bunch of people who's my audience.
No.
I get it.
Listen,
that's a weird...
For example, there's a difference. There's people who go, oh, I love that Jimmy Fallon. Mm-hmm. There's not people who are like, Jimmy's coming to town. We're going to see Jimmy Fallon.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I would say probably like Mike Birbiglia.
Yeah.
It's probably one of the few guys in this zone between like fame that's crippling and...
but regular working, subsisting off, making a good living, having the opportunities he wants to create the things he wants.
That's the thing. Because for me, I love the shows I'm doing. I like the material I'm doing, and yet there's a position I need to get in to really create what I want to create.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to just do. I want to do something with magic I don't think anyone's ever done. And years ago, and you would laugh at me about this, as I would crap on magic all the time, as I'd be like, I need to give up magic if I want to be successful. Magic has always been, look what I can do that you can't do.
Yeah.
Magic has always been putting the attention on the performer and you being either excited or enthralled or challenged by how great that guy is at what he does.
Yeah.
Magic has never done what comedy has done in the last few years, that takes the attention off the performer and puts it on you and gets you to think about your own life. And I want to do a magic show that when you walk out of there, it makes you want to call your dad.
That's a beautiful sentiment.
I want to create a performance that changes the way people live their life, not in a weird way, but in an empowering way that lets people know, hey, the world is wonderful if you look around, and you can choose to do things differently. Yeah, buddy, that's the juice for me. That's what gets me.
What's amazing is you express that, which is a beautiful thought. It's a beautiful approach to it. You do this incredible podcast to help yourself and others, and this almost sounds like the person who adopts the dog and say, I didn't rescue the dog rescued me. Like, you're doing this for all these people, but ultimately you're saving yourself.
Yeah.
And in this instance, you've done this podcast, about to break, you broke. How have you changed your life? What's different now? But what's what have you done? What have you gone through? How have you changed? You've come out the other side. What have you learned?
Well, and
how has this all saved you?
It's very funny to have this conversation now. I feel like I needed to say something now, but I'm also not going to be ignorant enough to go either, hey, I'm over anxiety. Like, you know what I mean? I've come through an experience, but I know it's still a challenge. And even in the past couple of weeks, I've had moments where I've been like, oh, okay, there it is. It's happening. I'm going to ride the wave and be present. But I also know that I could very easily get myself back into a mode where my body takes over because I won't do what I need to do. But
it's also an anomaly.
Yeah.
I say that as somebody who has been to the edge, who has gone to hospitals for similar things, and who does live in the same fear and is working on giving myself permission to say, no, you're not going to wind up back there because you're already more self-aware. You have grown, you have changed. And even within that, the circumstances to get you there are circumstantial.
Right.
And it was the anomaly. It was not the rule. It was the exception.
But I don't want, what I don't want to do is negate that it was a wake-up call for me.
So how have you woken up? What is different now for you? You say all those. So you've touched anxiety. You know it's still going to be there. Depression is there for people who cope with depression.
Yeah.
Sadness is a part of life. You can't feel joy. You can't know what it's like to win a game if you've never lost a game. A night like the Comedy Store last night means nothing if I didn't have to cope with the crowd that we drew at Dynasty and go, God, have we lost it? Like, am I done? Am I finished? Am I no good? Did it not work? Should I stop? And then you have the night like not last night, which is worth it because if everything sold out, sellouts would be boring. Well,
and I think like you talk about an anomaly with this like moment that I had, but we were talking about this earlier that every performer deals with this. I've been to shows at great clubs in LA that the club itself should fill up the room, and 3 of the acts by themselves should fill up the room, and there's 8 people. Like. It's a normal occurrence.
And how do you not tie your self-worth to that?
Right.
This will be as performers our forever journey. How am I not supposed to tie my self-worth as a performer, a professional, a person who's expressing their genuine, honest thoughts?
Yeah.
And it doesn't go over or nobody shows.
Right.
Or I have one for you the other day that will, I think, make you laugh at me for what happened. I did the Van Nuys Comedy Club in the Springbok.
The world famous Van Nuys Comedy Club.
It's beautiful because it reminds me of what it was of some of the shows I did when I would start out in Connecticut, where it's like the back room of a bar. It's this. it's a good space, but it's also not. No one's going to the Springbok for comedy.
Yeah.
And after the show, after my set, I knew I did a great job. I'm in this place where I feel like no matter what the crowd is, I want to tell you about what I've been doing on stage, which you've seen, which is talking with the crowd and doing crowd work that is directly related to my bit.
Yeah.
Because I don't know many people who are asking direct questions about time travel while they're on stage.
No.
Getting the feedback from the crowd and then basing what I say next off of that. Knowing that I have punchlines and jokes that I can work in if you say the right thing. But if you don't say what I need, I can go and get it. But just really, and so it's this weird then, no matter what the crowd is, I'm just going to talk to you about what I think about time travel. So if you answer whatever you answer, I'm good. So I finished my set. I knew I did well. And I'm in the bathroom and finish using the restroom, and I'm going to wash my hands and leave. And one of the people who was in the show, the gentleman comes up and goes to compliment me. And he says, "Oh man, I really loved your act." And you know what I did internally?
What?
Act? Act? Excuse me, sir. That was not an act. That was the most honest, genuine, real. That was more me than I've been the rest of the week. Act? That wasn't an act. And I didn't say that out loud. I'm thinking and feeling it because I get what he was saying. He didn't.
Right.
But it's not an act. That's me, motherfucker. Like, that's me. Act. How dare you call this an act? An act is somebody who gets up there and, does a character and juggles a thing and spins a ball on his nose. That's an act. I went up there and told you my genuine feelings about my parents' divorce and time travel
and all this
and
is happening
with married women.
This is all happening in your head within 10 seconds. And then what do you actually say to him?
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. Glad you had a good time.
Buddy. Yeah. I think that, I've said this is a slogan that I've lived by for years. I repeat it constantly about taking what you do seriously, but not taking yourself too seriously.
100%. We've said that to each other.
And I just realized I got out of the groove, man. I was taking myself too seriously in the process. And I told Katie this unashamedly. I am not the best performer. I am not the best magician. I'm not the best comedian, but I will work harder than anybody else. And unashamedly, I will say that I don't know a friend that I have, and I have friends in both sides of the business, the comedy side and the magic side. I don't know guys that hustle as much as I hustle. And I was taking pride in that. But to my own detriment, to a point where I was not allowing myself, number one, to rest, to be present in the moment, because I'm always thinking about what the next thing is, and not allowing myself to enjoy the experience of the journey. And for a guy who strives so hard to create experiences for other people, I realized I'm having all these amazing opportunities and fun experiences, and I've not been here for them because I'm trying to not screw it up. And so this, when you ask what am I doing differently? I'm just trying to be present, man. I'm trying to, as much as I can, be home when I'm home. And when I'm at a gig that I'm not super excited about, realize that these are people. These are, you know what I mean? Regardless of whether or not this show is paying anything, or it's a fun room, or it's anybody that I know who's on the bill, like, there's freaking humans in this room who are all going through stuff.
That you can lead through this very unique journey.
We can exist in this moment together. Like, just appreciating the moments we have. And I think, and it's funny to say, because ultimately, physically, other than my cholesterol being crazy high, which is part of why all the diet and exercise is coming into play too. So that's a good wake-up call to catch that before it's too late. But because I genuinely thought I was having a heart attack, I don't want to miss out. I don't want to waste my time worrying about, what if I was 2 rungs ahead on the ladder?
Yeah.
Instead of just enjoying this moment right here. And so many of the shows that, we look at, like, Seinfeld, probably the biggest success in television history. And everybody who's ever done SNL, they all talk about it afterward like it was the greatest thing. And they all say while they were doing it, it was the worst thing. Like,
Jerry worked so hard on that show. He talked to Michael Richards, and they were like, but you understand that wasn't for us. That was for them. Our job was to work hard.
Right.
Although I do like the idea of you saying that once you got into the mode of working so hard and being the hardest worker, it's meant you started taking yourself seriously, which was, I'm going to outwork, I'm going to outdo.
Right. And you forget that so many of the opportunities you get aren't because of the work. It's because of who you are as a person. And if you lose yourself in the process of trying to hustle, then you're robbing yourself of the one commodity you have that's different than everybody else. Anyone can work hard, but there's only one Eddie Furth. There's only one Taylor. So in the midst of, like, do due diligence, do the work you need to do to take care of yourself and your family, but, like, don't lose yourself, man. That's the best thing you got.
Now, to that point, you kind of said it, and this is where I feel like I have the chance to reflect back to you. I get to reflect you back. Because in this conversation, you've said that we are our own business. We are the product, but we are also the company. You've just said that there's no one like Eddie. There's no one like Taylor. But then you put the pressure on yourself of saying, well, I'll never be the best magician. I'll never be the best this. But pardon my friend, fuck that. You're the best Taylor Hughes that there is. And by virtue of this business, there is no second. Look, you can make it a grand example. The Tonight Show is not The Tonight Show anymore. The Tonight Show was with Johnny Carson because there was one and only one Johnny Carson. Right. And never again has or will it exist, because there's a lot of factors that go into it too, but there's only one Johnny. And I'll be honest, I've studied a lot of it recently, especially. Letterman should have never taken that show over. Right. Letterman needed to do the thing he did to be as good as he was and to get him. Leno the same. But there's only one Taylor Hughes. You are the best Taylor Hughes, and there's literally nobody else in the world who can do what you do. Part of that does have to do with hard work, but part of it has to do with you're the best at doing what you do the way you do it. No one else I know tells the stories you tell and puts the care into creating the experience in the way that you do. Now, is that to say that somebody else might have a better sleight of hand? Sure. Might somebody else have a different illusion? Sure. Might Siegfried Tieber put together an experience in a different way? You will. Yes. But given time and resources, he could still never come up with what you would come up with. You are the best at that. And it can be difficult when we are in a large group of people, all competing is the wrong word, but trying to sell such similar products. All comedy and magic look the same on the surface, the way all movies look the same on the surface. There's moving pictures on a screen, and you're going to spend your $8 to $18 to go see it. Which one are you going to pick? Will it be with The Rock? Will it be with Robert Downey Jr.? Is it going to be an indie flick, a documentary, a family film, a cartoon? Doesn't matter. The Incredibles and the Mr. Rogers documentary may seem like they're related, but they're also not, because if you want to watch one, there's only one you can watch. Right. You want to watch the Mr. Rogers documentary, The Rock's new movie Skyscraper isn't going to do it for you. Yeah. And vice versa. If you're in the mood for Skyscraper, the Mr. Rogers doc, Incredibles 2, not going to do it for you. Right. And it is definitely tough to find the audience. Yeah. I use The Rock as the example all the time. He doesn't know what it takes to draw people to the theater. Right. I'm sure he wanted Skyscraper to open better than it did. But you know what? It's also a hell of a fun movie. It's also very interesting. It's also still a whole effort that they put together and planned and made. And in that respect, you are the best Taylor Hughes. And there are plenty of people I always say it's a line, right? You're in a line. There's people spaces back who wish they were as good as you were. Wish they were as personable, could tell a story, could draw people in emotionally. There's magicians there's a lot of magicians who have no concept of how to draw people in emotionally the way that you do. So if you're going to sit here and you're going to tell me, we are the product, we are the business, there's only one, there's only this, then do not also sit here and try to give me this, I'm not the best magician. It's not nearly as simple as being the Michael Jordan of magic, because also in basketball, it's not a numbers game. There are intangible elements on the court that make Magic Johnson, to me, a better player than Michael Jordan, because even without the same number of championships and without the same record and without the same points scored, Magic intangibly was better all around, made his teammates better, had a better showing, could play more positions, X, Y, or Z. Yeah. Right? You have intangibles that are not measurable, that if you wanted to use words like great magician or better magician or best magician, I would be like, I'm calling foul because you're missing the point.
Dude, you're a good man.
Thank you. You're a good man.
I am so grateful. I'm so grateful for these conversations.
I have 2 things left.
You got 2 things left? Okay, let me say this. I'm just one of the first conversations you and I had, you talked about like you need to go out and you need to do things and you need to leave the house. And that challenged me, man. Like before, I mean, this is what, 2.5 years, 2 years ago? 2 years ago, probably.
God, it must be coming up on that.
I think it's almost 2 years. But dude, before then, I didn't produce shows. I didn't go and just hang with other performers. I didn't do that. And it has become the thing that I love doing almost more than just performing. Like you know what I mean? Like the communal aspect of it.
You're around people who understand.
Yes. And so thank you, man. Thank you for being willing when we met in the back of a limo on the crappiest commercial shoot the world's ever known, that, you were willing to like stay in touch and get together and put together shows. And you know what I mean? Like,
what a crazy lifelong friendship.
It's nuts, dude.
And partnership.
It's nuts.
Like I look at this idea, because I recognize I'm coming into something of an adulthood at this point, I suppose.
Yeah.
Right. The next stage in life where I'm sort of a grown up and sort of starting my own businesses and things like that, that I have a friend and business partner that I believe in and trust and love the way that I do with you. And I know that, we're the guys we're going to be talking. We're the guys who are going to be, you and I are our own comedians in cars getting coffee. Right? When you see that, that's what I do enjoy. I enjoy seeing Jerry sit down with somebody who he's been lifelong friends with,
right,
and gets to talk about the trials, the tribulations, the things that they have done, haven't done, the businesses that they've worked, just a whole spectrum. Like I recognize the way I watched my father have business partners that he was also friends with, and my grandparents the same. My grandfather's having business associates, but we're also really good friends. And you're one of those people, the 5 people that I can count on one hand where I'm like this is why I moved to LA. This is why I did this. It's to meet people like you, to know that 50 years from now, when we're on a porch in a rocking chair, we're telling the stories of being at the castle, of being over here, of trying this thing, of going over there and doing that, of seeing this crazy thing. Dude.
I love it, man. I hope that's an encouragement to folks that may be listening, because one of the issues with stress and anxiety is feeling isolated and feeling like it's all on you and you're all alone and there's no one else there. But there are beautiful people out there that will, that also are wishing there was someone else who could help them and be there for them. And, you just have to open yourself up to it, man.
So here's your opportunity to help somebody else. What someone listening to this is on the verge of, or just has been, or is somewhere in relation. What did you need to hear? What do you need to hear? Tell somebody else what it is you needed to hear. If somebody could have talked to you right before that, or right after that, or even during this, what are the words that would mean the most to you? What do you need to hear? What do you wish somebody said to you?
You're good enough. Not in a excuse way, like stop trying, but that the stress I felt was I am working harder than anyone I know, and it's not enough.
And was it? Was it enough?
I think that what I lacked was inviting other people to be a part of it. And continuing to work hard, but just leaning into friendships, and whether that be, for help with a project or just help, with the life situation or how I was feeling, or not trying to put up a front that, one of the scariest things in this business is everybody looks like they've got it together. Every cafe you drive by in LA is full of people wasting all the money they made at Subway that morning to play a game that they can't win. And it's like you and I talked when your trip to New York, and all these amazing people that just accepted you. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, I hope it's okay with me sharing, but like I told you, like, we do so much to try to gain acceptance from our peers who aren't expecting us to be anything other than what we are. Like,
that's such a beautiful sentiment.
And to just realize that, yeah, you got to work. Yeah, you got to hustle, but your value is not determined by the size of the audience you had last week, or whether or not, there was a massive concert in town the same night of your show and people decided to go to that instead. There are people who love you and care about you, and you're not alone unless you choose to isolate yourself. And I made the mistake of being constantly around people, but keeping some things just for myself that were unhealthy. And yeah, just be real. People are attracted to that. There's enough fake crap out there.
I've heard of so many stories of people in LA being fake, and I have had nothing but the opposite experience. I mean, you look at me and you, right? You look at people like Joel Ward.
Yeah.
You look at every single magician I've met through you.
Yeah.
Matt McCarthy, Scout Durwood. I told you last night I was at the store. Tony Hinchcliffe.
Yeah.
Good friend of mine. Writes for every Comedy Central roast. Is on fire with Kill Tony and his Netflix special.
Oh, so
and
good.
Took the moment to reach out to me, and as many times as he's been on the show, and as much as we work together, he is such a supporting human being.
Yeah.
And takes the time to be like, sort of a welcome to the family at the Comedy Store.
Yeah.
And you realize then that we get the chance to pass that on to somebody else too.
Yeah.
But that is so, but without being vulnerable, without opening up, without talking, and then gives me the space to go back to Tony later in the night. How's the crowd looking? I wish it was bigger, man.
Yeah.
To then him just be like, never worry about it.
Yeah.
Him saying you're good enough, because that's what we want. We want the acceptance. We want to feel good. Right. And you and I right now are good enough. Yes, hard work. Yes, contribute. Right. Yes, all of it. Because you don't get it if you're not consistent, if you're not working, if you're not funny, if you're not good at the craft, if you're just doing the craft just to be a part of the club versus no, they can tell can tell when you really care. And when people know you really care, you're in. Mm-hmm. And then a trip to New York like that, I can stand in a group of people or on a stage with people or say hello to people where it's another human being and you recognize the effort they've put in, the life they've lived.
Mm-hmm.
I want to end with one more thing.
Do it.
As a comedian too, I think I think about this a lot. I talk about this a lot. I think everything in life is driven by this idea. And you talked about when the anxiety attack first hit.
Yeah.
You were convinced it was a heart attack. How did you deal with facing the idea of mortality at that moment? Did you have thoughts of death? Did you feel like this might be it? Did you confront that? Did you push it away? Here's your body going into a life or death response. Your brain perceives it as life or death.
Yeah.
You're facing the idea of death. Did you have those thoughts? What was that like?
All I thought about was my family. That's all I thought about.
But what was the thought?
I want to make sure they're okay. I want to make sure that they're taken care of. That, you know, Katie's with my kids and their cousins and their aunt, and I don't want them to be freaking out all night. Like, how's that going to go down? Are they okay? Or I mean, I didn't go to that point where I'm like, well, this is it. It's over.
Did you ever think it might have been it? Like, did you have that moment that night? Did you ever think like I might not get out of this one? Or did you always have a sense you'd be okay?
It scared me to death that, this is a sick, twisted thought, but, I thought about the fact that, like, well, I'm only 37. I'm not that old. I'm very young to have something like that happen. But I've eaten enough crap food with enough people that people would go, yeah, it kind of makes sense. and that's,
I did see him have extra bacon on his turkey club. Serves him right.
And that's the part that scared me, was realizing that that I may have that, you know, even not that I was going to die necessarily, but that I may have damaged. I may have like messed up the rest of my life by not taking care of my body, like by not thinking about what's going through my arteries, and then I thought, well, what does that mean for my family if all of a sudden I've got to? What does that mean for my career? What does that mean? You know, if I got to be on some medication the rest of my life because I screwed things up, or if I've got a
control issue.
I know.
We all have it.
I know.
Especially as performers. And look, I don't know anything.
Yeah.
But what I would say is I feel like there might be something to learn there, in that the two thoughts that crossed your mind were you wanted them to be okay.
Yeah.
And you might have done something to screw this up.
Yeah.
And it feels like maybe therein lies the answer of how you got to that place, because those may be. That's why I asked, because I feel like in the moment where we do face mortality, if we are ever confronted with death, whatever it is we think of first, would be the concern we have in life. And most of what we've just talked about is that the anxiety that led you to get there had to do with you trying to take care of your family, and fear of you messing up, not taking care of yourself or not being there for them, also the damage you might have done to yourself.
Yeah.
And therein may lie the answer, but what do I know?
Yeah, buddy. It's good stuff to think about.
How you feeling right now?
Feel good. I'm a little hot. It's kind of sweaty in the shed quarters.
It is.
We did this whole thing without the air conditioner on because we're like, the buzz will be annoying for people. Again, thinking about the audience.
Yeah. I think it helped for us. This was
very good, man. Thank you for doing this. I knew, man, it was very hard for me. I took 2 weeks off from posting on the podcast, and then I was like, well, I can't just post one of the episodes I record. I gotta say something, and I didn't know what to say. So, thank you, Eddie, for hosting.
If anything says anything to me about who we are as people and performers, it was it was the second thought that I had.
Yeah.
Because I found out about this a few days after.
Yeah.
And you were okay.
Yeah.
And so the truth is, by the time I heard, you were completely out of the woods.
The initial scare, yeah.
The initial moment is, oh my God, I hope he's okay, but you are okay. So the very second thought that I had is this very real thought of, it's so important for, if we are as performers going to change the world at all, it is to be completely vulnerable, to show people, be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And this is what life is.
Yeah.
At your best or worst, it's still just being open and honest and truthful, communicating, expressing who you are.
Yeah.
So and I tried to find a way to couch it when I was saying it to you, but my very first thought, it's a second thought, but it was the first real one, because the first one wasn't You were fine.
Right.
The first thought was, is he okay? Yeah, he's okay. Well, this is going to make a hell of a story that you need to tell. This is a podcast. And I knew no matter what, I mean, because God, it ties in perfectly. About to break, you broke. So what's the experience like when you do break?
Yeah.
How are you going to come back from it?
Yeah.
What do you change? How do you respond to this? And I know 100% because of who you are, you will do nothing but respond beautifully. And I think that you will probably go through a few weeks and a few months and maybe a year or so of kind of tiptoeing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's also going to be a moment where you recognize it's an anomaly and that attacking basketball terms. You went to the hole, you got knocked down, you sprained your ankle, you get back up. The most important thing is to remember to attack the basket again.
Mm.
It was not, that's why I say it's an anomaly. It's not driving to the basket that got you hurt.
Yeah.
You have to stay aggressive. And
Yeah.
it is absolutely in our nature to be like, well, now I got to back off a little. But in that same respect, what makes you is the fact that you attack the basket. Jordan didn't stop attacking the basket after he broke his foot that one time. He was just like, I'm going to find a better way. I'm going to get stronger and attack the basket. The Detroit Pistons knocked him down. Well, I'm going to lift more weights. And then I need this. I'm going to find a way. He was relentless.
Yeah.
In a healthy way, in a good way, using him as an example, obviously he had some unhealthy tendencies, and we will too. And it is a constant hand on the steering wheel of course correcting left, right, got to stay on the center.
Right.
But don't forget, attack the basket again.
Yeah, buddy. I was so nervous. I canceled a few shows. I basically like backed off this month everything I could back off.
Yep.
And had some friends cover for me for some things, and then I was hosting these shows. We're doing these Magic on Tap shows here in Upland, which have been really fun. And Dana Daniels was doing the first one, Chipper was doing the second one, and I was going to do close-up magic at the bar. And right beforehand, I was so nervous because I was like, what if I can't do this? And buddy, I swear to you, the second I started performing, it was just like,
You want to laugh at me?
yeah.
Did you see Ant-Man yet? Ant-Man and the Wasp?
No.
Well, you know your friend Blake Voigt is in it.
Yeah.
And do you know his participation in it?
No, I don't know what I just saw the photos of him doing, the behind the scenes stuff.
I can give you the full recap without any major spoiler.
Okay.
He worked on set with Paul Rudd to teach Paul Rudd how to do an up-close illusion with a card.
Okay.
In the movie, Blake Voigt is... his character in the movie is essentially him on a YouTube video that Paul Rudd
that's funny.
has been watching to learn this trick because he's under house arrest. So he's like, I'll do anything to entertain my kid, even magic. And so he does, I couldn't tell you what it is, but he makes the card appear. Back palm. So there's Paul Rudd learns it in the movie from watching Blake Voigt on the YouTube channel. And they keep going back to this bit a few times. And at one point, I swear to God, so Paul Rudd's trying to learn it. He's trying to learn it. Someone else in the movie sees it and starts trying to learn it. And then Heidi looks over at me and I have my hand out with no card. She dies laughing. She's like, you too now?
That's fantastic.
So I'm trying to learn. No card on my hand. It's called back. Just trying to get the back. Is this what it would look like? And she just laughs just at me like that.
Oh, that's funny. Well, we're going to go do a back palm lesson right now, guys. We're going to go practice some cards.
So tell the kids where they can find you. Where can they find you?
Full host mode. Well, you can find out more about this here podcast at abouttobreakpodcast.com. What day is it? This is coming out Wednesday. I'll put this out right after we're done here. I'll put it out tonight. Friday, the 20th, in 2 days, I'll be at Dynasty Typewriter.
Good venue. Beautiful
so excited.
place.
My first time performing there at the Gold Rush show. They're advertising like a huge surprise guest, and I don't know who it is. But every time they've had a huge surprise guest, they don't disappoint. So
it's actually going to be massive. This is a place that has Adam Sandler, Patton Oswalt, Sarah Silverman, Dan Harmon, legitimate headlining around the country comedians.
Yeah, and the two other comics on the bill are have Netflix. Like it's
who are you on with?
It's going to be. Let me see who I'm on with. I should know off the top of my head. Let me see.
You don't have to fill the air.
This is the line.
Taylor Hughes, Sabrina Jolie. I know her. I watched her prep for her Netflix 15. Have you seen those 15s?
Yeah. Yep.
I know like 9 of those people.
I know.
Jack
when they came on, I was like, oh my
he's
gosh,
amazing.
these
Sam
guys have all
Jay's
done the
Sam Jay
roast.
is my favorite out of those. Have you seen Sam J's?
No.
Watch hers. She's
Okay.
really smart on that one. She's an SNL writer.
Oh, awesome.
She's
man.
amazing. Taylor Tomlinson's a good friend of mine. She's fantastic on that one too.
So cool.
The bit that she's got circulating on online, the clip that they pulled that's on all the comedy Instagrams is she compares guys in their 20s that she's dating who won't use a condom to kids who won't put a jacket on over their Halloween costume. It's a good one. You should definitely watch it.
That's funny.
That's a great lineup. That's going to be fun.
It'll
So
be
they can
fun.
see you there. Where else can they catch you?
Saturday we have our last Magic on Tap for this run. That one's sold out right now. But then
Who's with you at Magic on Top this weekend?
I'm doing it. So I'm doing the show this week, and then I've got a gentleman by the name of David Grimm is going to be doing the bar magic for me.
Beautiful.
Yeah, man, that's been fun. We'll probably do some more of those. But that one's sold out. And then on Tuesday night, you and I will be performing together.
Give them the date. Give the kids the date.
That's the 24th, Tuesday, July 24th. Eddie Furth, who you've heard here on the podcast, myself and Joel Ward will be performing at the Clubhouse Theater. Free show, free parking, which in LA is the biggest magic trick ever.
Let me tell you how
7
important.
PM show.
Let me tell you how important parking is in LA. Taylor Hughes had a panic anxiety attack and went to the hospital, and one of the questions I asked him is how far it was and how he got there in traffic. That should let you know how legitimately intriguing the parking situation is.
Oh, it was nuts. It was totally nuts. Yeah, so Tuesday night, July 24th, come out, guys. It's a free show, 7 p.m. It's the Low Bar Variety Hour, where we get some of LA's best acts and then ask them to do brand new material. And this time we're actually doing a little lottery thing where performers who want to come and see the show can put their name in a hat. We're going to draw a couple extra performers for the show off of audience members. So it'll be a blast.
That's awesome.
Where are you got coming up? You guys had your show last night at the Comedy Store.
Yeah, that was good. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram especially. I think Instagram's the best social media right now, but they'll screw it up soon.
Yeah.
It's historical roast and fictional roast, and our next show is August 30th. It's a Thursday night at 8 p.m. at Dynasty Typewriter, and we're roasting Harry Potter.
So cool.
Thank you for having me, man.
Thank you for having me on my show. We've gabbed for 2 hours, man. Let's turn this off and go talk some more.
All right. I love you.
Love you too, man.